Friends, this is one of those times when I have no idea what was last happening in Glastonbury, but I'm just going to continue where we left off anyway. Get up, dear! Get up! She now cried aloud in a voice not tender, but resolute and emphatic. As she spoke, she herself struggled out of the chair. Standing erect now, she felt in more control of the situation, and she took hold of Miss Drew's hand and managed to drag her up from her knees. She was startled as she did this by the burning feverishness in the woman's fingers. But when she got her safe on her way, the agitated lady fell into a fit of violent shivering as if, in the fever of her emotion, she had been plunged into ice-cold water. But she resumed her old place by the empty grate, though Mary could see the thin blue arm that she extended along the mantelpiece was trembling so much that it made a couple of ornaments that stood there jingle and tinkle against each other. Miss Drew glanced sideways now at the ticking clock, as if she could have struck out in life with one blow and left it pointing at 10 minutes past 9 in an eternal paralysis. Well, she whispered huskily, why don't you go up and pack your things if that man is waiting for you? Mary walked slowly to the window. She was once more in an anguish of indecision. The tragedy of passion often consists in the depths of harsh unloveliness into which it throws its victims. Miss Drew, by the tone in which she said, "Go up, that man is waiting," had done her utmost to destroy the very pity upon which her fate depended. The poor heart, as her red-sashed companion had called her in her thoughts, was indeed in a tragic impasse. Well, have you decided against me, against the one thing I've ever begged, on my knees, of a living soul? Her words seemed to come, not from her own mouth, but from some other Miss Drew, a towering image of devastated frustration that hung and wavered in the air between them. But Mary continued obstinately, staring out at the window into the round half-circle of trimly weeded gravel, surrounded by thick laurel bushes from which a winding driveway led to the gate. The window was open at the top, but not content with this, she presently pulled aside the muslin curtains and opened it at the bottom. She now stood there motionless, listening intently, while the warm August air stirred her gown and, entering the room, made the candles flicker. Several little brown moths took the opportunity of flying in past her white figure. Some rushed to perish at the candles of the table, while others beat themselves against the lamp till they fell upon the floor. Neither Miss Drew nor her companion had any margin of consciousness left for these little suicides of blind desire. Miss Drew's thoughts flickered much more wildly than the softly fluttering curtains or the lightly stirred folds of her companion's frock. They were a strange jumble, these thoughts, a jumble of old, conservative prejudice and passionately covetous longings rendered intensely concrete and circumscribed by reason of their long suppression. Relate to that. Mama! Mama! Never fit on sofas. Weakness to sit on sofas. Hold your back straight now. Straight, Euphemia! Betty Newton in hayloft, kissing. Mama! Angry like God. God sees all. He will hold her all night. A sneak. Tramp, trickster, a thief, friend of Gerd, Gerd meddling with chalice well, Gerd letting loose all the devils, burning, Betty Newton, Mama, bed all day, bread and water, too long, sweet, so very sweet. And for him, all for a dirty trickster. No one knows how sweet but me, too old now, old. Never sit on sofas. Weakness. Hold your black back straight, Euphemia. A dirty adventurer must have her Hard she is. Hard to me. Soft as clay to him. It burns. It would be only once. Peace, rest. Lovely, heavenly peace. Her red sash. It burns. Lillian Rogers in bed. Never knocked. Never rang. Everything changed since the man became mayor. Chalice well. Blood. Her sash. Red blood. It burns! Never for me. After this. Never for me. She'll be gone soon. Listening for him out there. Gone. Gone. A maid no more. It burns. Lily and Roger in bed. 2 pillows. Slept watching. Watching slept. Mama. Grandmama. Crying all night. Never came. Never heard. It burns and burns and burns. Well, that was weird, huh? I couldn't be happy in our room tonight, thought Mary. And after all, no, I'll do it, the poor woman. It's better than giving her white geraniums to hold in her hand. She shut the window with a violent jerk of her strong bare arms. She turned and came slowly, gravely, gently towards the figure by the mantelpiece. She came close up to Miss Drew and threw her arms around her as she would have thrown them around a wounded animal. I'll stay, she whispered softly to her. I'll stay, dear. The rush of wild excitement, relief, passion, shame, the motion of racing blood from heart to nerves, brain, throat, were too much for the wrought-up feelings of the woman. Her head sank down like the head of a reed in the water when a sluice is open, and upon Mary's shoulders her tears fell now without stint, while a queer whimpering, like the crying of a child whose mother had suddenly appeared among a crowd of strangers, showed signs of changing into hysterical laughter. Come and lie down, dear. There. I'm not going to leave you, not for one moment. My dear, my poor darling. Come and lie down. Only just a minute. Thus murmuring, Mary half-dragged, half-supported her till she got her safe upon the sofa. Upon that very sofa where Mamma had so often told the little Euphemia that it was weakness to recline. Then the girl's practical mind began to work fast. I must, she thought, run out and tell John. I'd better go and get hold of Lily. Oh, mercy. Her eyes are shutting. I hope she's not going to faint. Thrusting a pillow under Miss Drew's head, Mary ran to the door, unlocked it, and hurried down the passage. She had shut the door carefully behind her, but even so, she did not want the lady to hear her shouting for help. Lily, she called gently. There was no answer, but she thought she detected the sound of hurried movements and disturbed voices in the far distance. Lily, Louis, where are you? Then she heard the unmistakable sound of a man's voice, the voice of Mr. Weatherwax. She opened the kitchen door. Come here, Lily, come quick, please. I want you. Miss Drew's ill. There was bread and cheese upon the kitchen table, and also, Mary noted, it with a housewife's indignation, even at the crisis, the brandy decanter from the dining room sideboard. The scullery door opened, just wide enough to allow the entrance of a very slim virgin, and Lily, hurriedly pinning on her white cap, slipped into the kitchen with eyes very wide and even her pretty mouth a little open. Oh, Lily, Miss Drew's unwell. I made her lie down on the sofa, and I think... La, ma'am, does mistress want a brandy? Mr. Weatherwax just dropped in to ask how we was, off for vegetables, and Louis thought... I'm making her Swedish again. Or Norwegian, or wherever that is. Listen, Lily, we must try and help Miss Drew upstairs, and go get her into bed. I shall sleep with her tonight, so you can take my pillow and things into her room. 1 minute, Lily. Just go and tell Mr. Weatherwax not to go for a moment. If she's too heavy for us, he could carry her up. Yes, ma'am, yes, Mrs. Crow. Mary hurried back into the drawing room. To her astonishment, Miss Drew was standing by the mantelpiece again, but her whole manner was changed from what it had been. She was self-possessed now and very quiet. "Come here, child," she said. Mary went up to her, and she took the girl's head gravely between her hands and kissed her forehead. "I've changed my mind," she whispered, very dignified and commanding. "I wish you'd go after all. Run out now quickly and tell that man to wait for you. And then come back and pack your things. And I shan't expect you back till Monday morning." "I wish it, Mary. You must do what I tell you. I shall be absolutely all right. I shall get up early and go to St. John's." The curious thing about this long, hurried speech was that Miss Drew never raised her voice above a whisper. Mary stared at her. The sight of their two unstated coffee cups brought back so vividly the painful scene she had gone through the night that this change in her employer's tone seemed dreamlike and unnatural. But before she had time to reply, Lily came quickly in without even a pretense at a knock. "Lily," said Miss Drew calmly, raising her voice now so that it sounded quite as usual. Quite as usual. "You know, of course, that Miss Mary is married." "Yes'm, Miss Mary told me, mum." "But she's going to be with us, as before, I'm glad to hear," Miss Drew went on, making several little movements with her hands among the objects of the coffee tray. "That is, during the daytime. But I've told her we'll be able to manage without her tomorrow. For we mustn't be selfish, must we, Lily?" "Yes? No, mum." But the lady of the Abbey House now turned to the extremely embarrassed Mrs. John Crow. "Run on, dear, and tell your good man that we're all helping you pack and that you won't be kept long." Dominated by the authority in her tone and spared any protest by the presence of Lily, Mary had nothing for it but to obey her to the letter. She went to the door, which Lily gravely opened for her, and slipped out into the hall. She did not soon forget her queer sensation, as if she had been turned into a bit of seaweed on the top of a great cresting wave of compulsion, as she looked hurriedly around for something to throw round her. There was a big 18th century mirror hanging in the hall, and in a flash of queer detachment, as one of her hands mechanically went up to her hair, she thought to herself, "Women must have wrapped things around their white shoulders like this, while arrows were flying, guns firing, torches waving, men shouting, for hundreds and hundreds of years." She opened the front door and descended the stone steps. Then, with the cloaks she'd picked up clutched tight around her, more as a protection from the night, from obscure evasion of her nakedness, than for warmth in that moment of summer air, she ran rapidly down the drive. Yes! There he was. "No, not now, John," she panted breathlessly as he hugged her against him, almost lifting her off the ground in his thankfulness to have her get her again. There, let me go, John." And when she was free, "I must go back now for my things. I only came to tell you I was—" She could hardly get the words out in her agitation. "To tell you I was coming. You wait here, John." She ran off up the drive again and out of his sight, almost before his unspeakable relief had found time to flow in his confused brain from the arms which had held her. He could not remain still. Every pulse in his body was beating, and his heart was as voluble as the French clock, still ticking behind Miss Drew as she talked quietly to Lily. He set himself a pace up and down the road like a sentinel guarding some royal palace. There was all sorts of vague, delicious scents upon the soft air that rustled through the laurel bushes, stirred the wallflowers in the crannies of the great wall, went sighting off like the breath of an invisible spirit over the tops of the trees. But from some remote cowshed somewhere out towards Highwood Gap, on the road to West Pennard, he could hear the pitiful cry of a beast in pain. This cry went on, tossing forth upon the summer nights with woeful persistence, John stood and listened nervously, leaning upon his hazel-root stick. Damn, he thought, and it must be a pain like that this woman's enduring now, only in the heart, am I carrying off Mary. What a thing, that not one perfect day can be enjoyed by anyone without hearing something groan or moan. What would young Decker be doing in my case? Well, it's clear that he'd be going by what he's done over Mrs. Zoylan. Cleared out of it, hands off, and spent his time between Paradise and Bovetown, comforting the sick. He resumed his sentry's march, but his mind was beating now against the blood-stained wedge of the world's pain, and he could not give up himself with absolute assent to his good hour. He prodded the crumbling stonework of the wall with the end of his stick in angry pity. Pity for Miss Drew. Pity for that suffering beast on the West Pennard Road. Pity for the whole array of anguished nerves upon which the great, blunt thumb of evil was strumming a nightly gamut amid these sweet summer scents. Well, I'll leave you there, worried about the blunt thumb of evil strumming its nightly gamut amid these sweet summer scents. I think that's something we can all relate to these days. So next time, please be careful out there. I'll see you in Glastonbury. Cheers.